KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting cellist Joshua Roman, performing from his album Immunity, alongside music by J.S. Bach and more. Sunday, June 22nd at UC San Diego's Epstein Family Amphitheater. Reserve your tickets at artpower.ucsd.edu.
Good morning, I'm Debbie Cruz. It's Monday, August 21st. The worst of the tropical storm has passed through the county. More on that next, but first, let's do the headlines. You may experience delays today if you are driving on Interstate 8 between San Diego and Imperial counties. There was a rock slide on the interstate near Incopah yesterday afternoon. It happened as the tropical storm brought rain and wind to the region. The storm has also postponed the first day of school for the San Diego Unified School District. Superintendent Lamont Jackson says today will be a workday for teachers and staff to make sure campuses are ready to open tomorrow.
We need some time to assess any flooding, any downed trees, any of the leaks that may occur from so much rain coming down in such a short period of time.
Most of the other school districts in the county have already begun classes for the fall and expect to be back in session this morning. A win for Mexico. Tijuana's Little League All-Star Baseball team crushed Canada yesterday 10-1 in the Little League World Series in South Williamsport, Pennsylvania. The team will face their next opponent tomorrow at 10 a.m. The Tijuana Little Leaguers hadn't made it to the World Series since 2013. From KPBS, you're listening to San Diego News Now. Stay with me for more of the local news you need.
Now on the Finest podcast, the NPR Tiny Desk Contest. We highlight our favorite local entries and hear from the artists who made them.
We're just very tired of hearing music that doesn't represent the people or is very nonsense or just dumbing people down.
Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
San Diego got soaked on Sunday as Tropical Storm Hilary raced through the county. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the storm had wind speeds over 100 miles per hour at its peak, but the system was significantly weaker when it arrived in San Diego.
Tropical Storm Hilary brought rain and blustery conditions as the swirling mass of clouds rolled over San Diego County. National Weather Service meteorologist Alex Tardy says it was only the second time in the last 100 years that something like this happened.
We don't get a system like this. No matter how warm the ocean is, no matter how much is going on with El Nino or not, we haven't got a tropical storm to come right at us like this. I mean, 1939 is a long time ago, and we don't even know exactly where that hit.
The storm arrived midday on Sunday, and most people heeded warnings to hunker down. There were cars on the freeway, but it wasn't weekday rush hour, and most people were taking their time. Tardy says it also helped that the storm moved through the region pretty quickly.
You don't want any system, no matter how weakened it is, with tropical origins, so warm core system, to be slow moving. It just doubles your wind and rain, literally.
But when the front edge of the tropical disturbance first touched the county just after 2 p.m., the rain got heavy and the wind picked up near the Spirit of Imperial Beach statue where Palm Avenue meets the ocean. Mari Sala came to the Imperial Beach coastline to see the storm firsthand.
When I started to hear about it, I thought people were kind of like going a little bit crazy for maybe something that might not be too crazy. I hadn't really ever heard of a hurricane coming around San Diego, especially in San Diego. Like, that's why we live in San Diego, so that none of that stuff happens.
It only took a couple of minutes for Sala and her family to be completely soaked. A small umbrella offered little help, but that didn't diminish the excitement as the waves pounded the coast. Marco Vasquez was visiting from Huntington Park, California. He was walking along the beach completely drenched with shoes in hand.
Yeah, I'm enjoying myself, so I don't see it much as a storm, but it's nice. I mean,
Water wasn't only falling from the sky here, it was also coming out of the ground. City crews have installed pumps to help clear standing water off nearby roads. At one point, the stormwater pumps created a geyser on the beach more than 6 feet high. That was just the kind of show local Dominic Perez was hoping to see. He was happy to trade dry clothes for a peek at the unusual.
See what's going on, see how it looks. I know no one else is really going to be out here, so how many times do you get to see a hurricane just storm flow over everything, you know?
It was business as usual at Imperial Beach's Ye Olde Plank Inn bar, except for some water collecting near the side door. The storm didn't seem to be noticed by the Sunday crowd. Jerry from Imperial Beach was enjoying a cool beverage and wondering what all the fuss was about.
Well, being from the Midwest, this is really nothing. This is just a typical rainy day. Nothing stops, nothing is closed up, nothing is boarded up. This is very mild to what I'm used to.
And if you're wondering, her Midwestern roots are in Oklahoma, where she says the weather changes almost every hour. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The average mortgage rate in the U.S. is the highest it's been in more than 20 years. Producer Emmeline Mohebi breaks down what that means for buyers and what's to come.
Mortgage rates reached 7.1% late last week. The last time rates were that high was April 2002. SDSU marketing professor Miro Kopik says that means that someone who puts down a 20% down payment and has a $500,000 loan would pay about $560,000 in interest over 30 years. That's about $270,000 more compared to 2021. But he told KPBS the high rates make sense in today's economy.
If you go back from 1972 to 2007, the average American mortgage ranged from about 6% to 16%. And so, this is a very, typical rate for the type of economy that we have.
Kopik says there's very little movement going on in the real estate market right now because of the high interest rates. He says we're not going to see mortgage rates decline drastically over the next 18 to 24 months. Some economists say it could even go as high as 8%. Emmeline Mohebi, KPBS News.
Coming up, we hear from a poet who reflects on her family's experiences as refugees in a new poetry collection. We'll have that and more just after the break.
Now on the Finest podcast, the NPR Tiny Desk Contest. We bring you the history of the concert series and the competition and hear from artists behind our favorite local entries.
We're just very tired of hearing music that doesn't represent the people or is very nonsense or just dumbing people down. People want to relate to the music that they're listening to. People want to hear people's stories or struggles.
Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
A portion of the original Berlin Wall has a new permanent home in Tijuana. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis spoke with one of the people responsible for bringing it there.
On a hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean, just a few feet away from the U.S.-Mexico border, a 3-ton slab of the original Berlin Wall has found a new home.
We didn't want our wall to be behind a specific barrier, whether that barrier be a physical one or not a physical one, like cost involved to be able to see it.
That's Marcos Klein Marquez. He's an LA-based TV producer who helped bring this section of the Berlin Wall to Tijuana. He says it's important for people to see it, walk up to it, touch it, grab it. By placing it along the border, he hopes to send a positive message to Tijuana's migrant population.
A sign of telling the people who are looking for a better life or have struggled to be here that there are groups of people that are paying attention to this and talking about getting rid of barriers.
Klein Marquez isn't just talking about physical barriers. He also criticizes U.S. immigration policy that limits legal migration, particularly for migrant farm workers. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Migration can be a very emotional experience. That's the case for many people in the Vietnamese diaspora, whose lives were disrupted by war. Poet Phung Thi Vuong reflects on refugee migration from Vietnam and its aftermath in a poetry collection titled A Plucked Zither. Vuong is also a PhD candidate at UCSD, where she studies Asian American feminism. She spoke to my colleague Jade Hindman about the collection and about her journey as a poet.
So let's start with your background. You and your family came here from Vietnam as immigrants and refugees. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I was born in Vietnam. My family is from Hue, the central region of Vietnam, and I came when I was 4. And so we were part of a later wave of migration in the 90s. So my father was part of the police force in southern Vietnam, and so there was just more coordination with nations and the UN to accept refugees from Vietnam after 1975, which was when the war ended.
Did that affect your sense of identity and belonging growing up?
I think so. I think 4 is, I would call it a tender age. You're kind of forming your sense of self, and your connections to your family members are really important. And so one thing I write about is my relationship with my grandmother, for example. And those are relationships that I feel could have been stronger if I stayed. That's something I kind of wonder about through the collection. I wonder about the cultural forces that I could have been surrounded by. And on the other hand, I grew up in Oakland, and so that's a whole nother cultural world that I was a part of.
When did you first get into writing poetry?
Yeah, my experience writing poetry is definitely a little bit roundabout compared to other writers, I think. I considered myself a closeted writer in high school. I kind of kept little scraps and a notebook that I would never share with anyone of poems. And I would be on the fringes, I think, of spoken word events, just admiring the bravery and the artistry of those writers and performers. And it wasn't really until after college that I started to wonder maybe I want to really challenge myself and think about self-expression and think about creativity and live that life. So it wasn't until after college when I worked as a teacher. So I started to set aside some time to work on that craft. And then, I eventually decided that it was something worth pursuing.
That's great. And, I'm curious, to what extent do you draw from your own experience when you write? I mean, one piece of common writing advice is write about what you know. So how does that impact and inform your poetry?
Yeah, it definitely informs my poetry. I draw from the moments that I experience, and I try to make sense of them through my writing. I might write about the longing or sense of grief of, for example, that relationship with certain family members or not having that relationship. I might draw from a feeling I get, walking down the street and seeing a certain scene or image. So it definitely involves myself. And at the same time, I also try to think more broadly, to try to think about concepts and ideas that reach beyond me as well.
Let's talk about A Plucked Zither. What inspired the title?
Yeah, the title comes from a poem in the collection. So the poem actually came first, but I was searching for a while for the right title, something that felt a little bit more specific than what I had originally thought would be the title. And for me, the plucked zither, the zither is a musical instrument, so it speaks to Vietnamese cultural heritage. And I love the image of the string because I am thinking through migration and connection in the collection. So the string, right, could connect 2 points. And then there's also the vibration of the string, which suggests movement. It's musical. And I just, again, love that it's a specific image that you can call to your mind.
How about language? Vietnamese words and phrases are interwoven throughout your poems. What is your relationship to language and the use of Vietnamese in your poetry?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. It's really important to me. So ironically, maybe, I am not fluent completely in Vietnamese. I really just speak it to my family, and I'm not fully literate in it either. So I am, looking up words in the dictionary. But for that very reason, that kind of grasping and reaching, that effort that I have to put into it is partly why it is so important to me. It's this continual process of trying to connect to the language and the culture and history. And then also, because that is a language that I mostly speak with my family, there's so much emotion to it, and even the emotion of that struggle, it just feels really important to stay with.
That was poet Phung Thi Vuong speaking with KPBS Midday Edition host Jade Heidman. That's it for the podcast today. As always, you can find more San Diego news online at kpbs.org. I'm Debbie Cruz. Thanks for listening and have a great Monday.
Now on the Finest podcast, the NPR Tiny Desk Contest. We bring you the history of the concert series and the competition and hear from artists behind our favorite local entries.
We're just very tired of hearing music that doesn't represent the people, or is very nonsense, or just dumbing people down. People want to relate to the music that they're listening to. People want to hear people's stories or struggles.
Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.